There is a quiet truth many people try to avoid. You do not become strong by thinking about strength. You do not become disciplined by wishing for discipline. Most people believe they need to feel motivated before they begin, as if action is something that comes after a certain emotional signal. They wait for energy, for clarity, for a moment when everything feels aligned. But this way of living creates a silent trap, because motivation is not stable. It rises and falls like the wind. Some days you wake up ready to move forward, and other days you feel resistance without any clear reason. If you allow your actions to depend on these changing feelings, your progress will always be inconsistent. The mind often looks for comfort. It prefers what is easy, what is familiar, what requires the least effort. When something feels difficult, the mind creates excuses. It says, "Not today," or "I will start when I feel better." These thoughts feel reasonable in the moment, but they slowly build a habit of delay. Over time, this habit becomes part of your identity. You begin to see yourself as someone who thinks a lot, but acts very little. Action must come before motivation, not after it. This is a shift that many people resist at first because it requires you to move without emotional support. It asks you to take a step even when you do not feel ready. But something interesting happens when you do this. The moment you begin, even with a small effort, your state starts to change. The resistance becomes weaker. The mind becomes clearer. Energy begins to follow movement. If you wait for motivation, you give control to something outside your discipline. But when you act, regardless of how you feel, you take control back. You train yourself to move forward under any condition. This creates a different kind of confidence, one that is not based on temporary feelings, but on proven behavior. There will be moments when everything inside you says to stop. These are the moments that matter most, not because they are dramatic, but because they are decisive. Each time you choose action in these moments, you strengthen a pattern. You show yourself that you are not controlled by your emotions. You begin to trust your own consistency. Many people underestimate how powerful small actions can be when they are repeated daily. They look for big bursts of motivation, thinking that one strong push will change everything. But real change is quieter than that. It is built in ordinary moments, when no one is watching, when nothing feels special, and when the only thing guiding you is your decision to act. The body and mind learn through repetition. When you act daily, even in small ways, you create a rhythm. This rhythm reduces resistance over time. What once felt difficult begins to feel natural. What once required effort becomes part of your routine. This is how discipline replaces the need for motivation. If you depend on how you feel, you will always have reasons to stop. If you depend on your commitment to act, you will always find a way to continue. Discipline is often misunderstood as something harsh, something restrictive, something that takes freedom away. Many people associate it with pressure, punishment, or control from the outside. But true discipline does not come from force. It comes from within. It is a quiet decision to treat your own life with care and responsibility. When you begin to see discipline in this way, it no longer feels heavy. It becomes a form of respect you show to yourself through your actions. Every time you follow through on something you said you would do, you send a message inward. You reinforce the idea that your words have value, that your intentions are not empty. This builds trust within yourself. Without this trust, even the simplest goals become difficult, because a part of you does not believe you will stay committed. Discipline repairs this gap. It aligns what you think, what you say, and what you do. There are moments each day when you are faced with a choice, not a big dramatic decision, but a small, quiet one. To get up when it is easier to stay in bed. To focus when distractions are close. To continue when stopping would bring comfort. These moments may seem insignificant, but they are where self-respect is either strengthened or weakened. Each time you choose the easier path, you teach yourself to avoid effort. Each time you choose the necessary path, you teach yourself to stand firm. Discipline is not about doing everything perfectly. It is about showing up even when your effort is not at its best. Some days your mind will be clear and your energy strong. Other days, everything will feel slow and heavy. Discipline does not change based on these conditions. It remains steady. It asks only that you continue, that you do not break the agreement you have made with yourself. When you begin to practice discipline consistently, something shifts inside you. You stop depending on external validation. You do not need someone to remind you, to push you, or to watch you. Your actions are guided by an inner standard. This creates a sense of stability. You become less reactive to distractions, less influenced by temporary desires, and more grounded in your purpose. Avoiding discipline may feel comfortable in the moment, but it often leads to a deeper form of discomfort over time. There is a quiet dissatisfaction that grows when you repeatedly ignore what you know you should do. This feeling is not loud, but it stays with you. Discipline, on the other hand, may feel uncomfortable at first, but it brings a different kind of peace, a calm sense that you are moving in the right direction, that you are not wasting your potential. Respect is not something you demand from others before you give it to yourself. It is something you build internally through consistent behavior. When you honor your commitments, even the small ones, you begin to see yourself differently, not as someone who depends on mood or circumstance, but as someone who can be relied upon. This is the essence of discipline. Not control, not restriction, but a steady expression of self-respect in action, repeated day after day, shaping who you become without the need for noise or recognition. There is a tendency to overlook small actions because they appear insignificant in the moment. The mind is often drawn to big results, dramatic changes, and visible transformation. It wants to see immediate progress, something that feels rewarding right away. Because of this, many people ignore the quiet power of small, consistent effort. They believe that if an action does not create a noticeable impact today, it is not worth doing. But this way of thinking prevents them from understanding how real change happens. Every action you take leaves a trace. It may not be visible at first, but it is there. When you repeat an action, that trace becomes deeper. Over time, these repeated behaviors begin to shape your habits. And your habits, more than anything else, shape your life. What you do occasionally has little effect compared to what you do consistently. This is why small actions, when practiced daily, carry so much weight. Consider how easily negative patterns are formed. Missing one day of effort feels harmless. Delaying one task seems unimportant. Choosing comfort once does not appear to matter. But when these small decisions are repeated, they slowly create a pattern of avoidance. Before you realize it, this pattern becomes your normal way of responding. The same is true in the opposite direction. One small act of discipline may not change your life today, but repeated daily, it builds a foundation that becomes difficult to break. The process is quiet. There is no sudden shift, no clear moment where everything changes. Instead, there is gradual movement. A small improvement in focus, a slight increase in confidence, a bit more control over your actions. These changes may seem too subtle to notice, but they are constantly building. Over time, they create a version of you that is stronger, more stable, and more capable. The mind often resists small actions because it seeks excitement. It wants something intense, something that feels meaningful right away. But the path of growth is rarely exciting in that way. It is repetitive. It requires patience. It asks you to trust a process that does not always give immediate feedback. This is where many people stop. They do not see results quickly enough, so they assume their efforts are not working. In reality, the results are forming beneath the surface. When you commit to small actions daily, you reduce the pressure to be perfect. You no longer feel the need to make huge changes all at once. Instead, you focus on what is within reach. This makes consistency easier. It removes the overwhelm that often leads to quitting. By keeping your actions simple and repeatable, you create a system that supports long-term progress. Over time, these small actions begin to compound. What once felt like a minor effort starts to produce noticeable results. The gap between who you were and who you are becomes clear, but this change did not come from a single moment of intensity. It came from quiet, repeated effort. The most powerful transformations are not built on sudden bursts of motivation. They are built on ordinary actions, performed consistently, without the need for recognition. There is a natural tendency within the mind to move toward comfort and away from difficulty. This is not a flaw, but it becomes a limitation when it begins to control your decisions. When something feels challenging, the mind quickly searches for an easier option. It creates reasons to delay, to avoid, or to choose a path that requires less effort. In the moment, this feels like relief. But over time, this pattern quietly shapes your behavior in ways that hold you back. Avoiding difficulty does not remove it. It only postpones it. The task remains, the responsibility stays, and often it becomes heavier with time. What could have been handled with a small effort grows into something more complex. This creates a cycle where avoidance leads to more pressure, and more pressure leads to further avoidance. Without awareness, this cycle becomes a habit that is difficult to break. Facing difficulties requires a different kind of response. It asks you to remain present when discomfort arises instead of escaping it. This does not mean forcing yourself in a harsh way, but rather choosing not to turn away. When you stay with a difficult task, even for a short time, you begin to understand that discomfort is not something that needs to be feared. It is often temporary, and it often carries growth within it. Every time you face something that challenges you, you strengthen your ability to handle similar situations in the future. The mind learns through experience. When it sees that you can move through discomfort without harm, its resistance begins to decrease. What once felt overwhelming starts to feel manageable. This is how resilience is built. Not in comfort, but in moments where you choose to continue despite resistance. Avoidance trains the opposite. Each time you step away from something difficult, you reinforce the idea that discomfort should be escaped. This makes future challenges feel even more intimidating. The mind becomes more sensitive, more reactive, and less willing to engage with effort. Over time, even small tasks can begin to feel heavy, not because they are inherently difficult, but because the habit of avoidance has grown stronger. Facing difficulty also changes the way you see yourself. When you consistently choose to engage with challenges, you begin to develop a quiet confidence, not the kind that seeks attention, but the kind that comes from experience. You know that you can handle more than you once believed. This understanding reduces fear and increases stability in your actions. There is also a clarity that comes from doing what is difficult. When you stop avoiding, your mind becomes less crowded with unfinished tasks and unaddressed responsibilities. This creates space. It allows you to focus more fully on what matters instead of carrying the weight of constant delay. The energy that was once used to avoid can now be directed toward progress. Difficulty is not something that blocks your path. In many cases, it is the path. It reveals where you need to grow, where your limits are, and where your attention is required. By facing it, you move forward. By avoiding it, you remain in the same place, even if time continues to pass. Consistency is often overlooked because it does not feel dramatic. It does not create sudden excitement or immediate transformation. It is quiet, repetitive, and sometimes even boring. Because of this, many people underestimate its value. They look for moments of intense effort, believing that one powerful push will bring lasting change. But without consistency, even the strongest effort fades quickly, leaving little behind. When you act consistently, you create stability in your life. Your actions are no longer dependent on how you feel in a particular moment. Whether your energy is high or low, whether your mood is clear or distracted, you continue to move forward. This steadiness removes the uncertainty that often slows progress. Instead of starting and stopping repeatedly, you build a continuous path. The mind resists consistency because it prefers variety and comfort. Repeating the same effort each day can feel restrictive at first. There may be a desire to skip, to delay, or to replace the task with something more enjoyable. But when you move past this initial resistance, something begins to change. The action that once required effort starts to feel natural. The resistance weakens, not because the task has changed, but because your relationship with it has changed. Consistency builds familiarity, and familiarity reduces friction. When something becomes part of your routine, it no longer demands as much mental energy. You do not need to think about it as much. You simply begin. This is where true progress starts to accelerate. Not because you are working harder, but because you are working without interruption. There is also a deeper effect that consistency creates. It shapes your identity. Each time you show up and do what you said you would do, you reinforce a certain image of yourself. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who does not easily break commitment. This identity becomes a source of strength. It influences future decisions, making it easier to stay aligned with your goals. Inconsistent effort creates a different pattern. You may work intensely for a short period, but then stop when motivation fades. This cycle of starting and stopping creates frustration. It makes progress feel slow and uncertain. Each time you pause for too long, you lose momentum, and starting again feels more difficult. Over time, this pattern weakens your confidence in your ability to stay committed. Consistency does not require perfection. It does not mean that every day will look the same or that your effort will always be at its highest level. Some days will be strong, others will be limited. What matters is that you continue. Even a small action keeps the pattern alive. It maintains the rhythm that supports long-term growth. Mastery is not built in moments of intensity. It is built in moments of repetition. When you return to the same action again and again, you refine it. You improve it. You deepen your understanding. What once felt unfamiliar becomes something you can do with ease and clarity. This process cannot be rushed, and it cannot be replaced by short bursts of effort. Over time, the results of consistency become visible. Not in a sudden shift, but in a steady transformation. The distance between where you started and where you are becomes clear, even if you did not notice the change as it was happening. This is the quiet power of consistent action, shaping your abilities and your character in a way that lasts. So in the end, your life is not defined by what you intend to do, but by what you actually do, again and again, not once, not when it is easy, but especially when it is difficult, when no one is watching, when you do not feel like it. This is where your true self is revealed. You are always shaping your future through your daily actions. Every step you take, no matter how small, is building something within you, strength or weakness, discipline or distraction, growth or stagnation. The choice is always present. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Do not wait to feel ready. The moment you act, you begin to take control. And when you continue to act day after day without breaking your commitment, you begin to realize something deeper. You were never lacking potential. You were only lacking some consistency. So return to your path again and again without noise, without excuses. And through your daily actions, you will master yourself.